Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sly Cooper Wiki. My name is Shrev, your usual host, and today we have a couple of special copies of Sly 3 that we're going to look at. Now you might be wondering, wait a sec Shrev, you've already unboxed this before, which if you haven't seen, there will be a link. And you'd be correct, I have unboxed the North American release of Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, and that's almost what these two copies look like. But there are a couple of minor and notable differences that I do want to point out. First off, a quick history lesson. So for those of you who live in Canada, please feel free to supplement me with more information or correct me if I'm wrong. But there is a certain region in Canada, known as Quebec, you might know it. They're a predominantly French-speaking region, and they also have some interesting rules regarding video game packaging, such that they require games to be packaged in both English and French languages. There's actually a few laws in place that require this in Quebec, and mainly in Quebec. I haven't really been able to find this sort of law anywhere else in Canada, only mainly in that French-speaking province. Consequently, the Sly Cooper games have also had to include some sort of English-French bilingual packaging to market to that province, and that's exactly what we have in front of us here today. We have specifically the Quebec release of Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, both the Black Label initial release as well as the Red Label Greatest Hits release. As in terms of release dates, I can only assume that both of these released at the same time the rest of the North American versions did. It would only make sense given that there's really no other indication that they would have released at a later date. And there's a few extras that these French-Canadian copies come with. For instance, what you're seeing right now actually is a sleeve. Both of these are actual sleeves that come packaged on top of a base English-only game. So as far as the sleeve is concerned, you might have already noticed that the red label on the Red Label Sly 3 has both Greatest Hits as well as Les Grands Succès, French for Greatest Hits, as one might assume. Additionally, a good indicator to tell you that this is a French-Canadian copy is by looking at the ESRB ratings, where it has both English and French for that ESRB rating. So here we have everyone 10 and up, as well as enfants et adultes, basically children and adults. Moving to the spine of the jacket, we see that there aren't really notable differences here. There are a few minor differences. For instance, the PlayStation 2 logo on the Red Label spine is smaller than it is on the English-only version, and the bottom of the spine where the SCUS disc ID is located is not covered in red as it is on the English-only version. And on my particular Black Label version, the SCUS number is actually faded a little bit. Additionally, these jackets are perforated on both sides of the spine for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure why, but it is perforated. I assume maybe it's easier to slip it into the plastic sleeve of the game, but I can only assume. The back is where things get very interesting, and it's where it becomes very apparent that this is definitely a French-Canadian copy due to the fact that you get your normal English-only descriptions that you find on the regular English-only variants, but you also get a French translation of each of those descriptions directly beneath each respective line. And that's seen throughout not only the descriptions of the screenshots and the games, but it's also seen in the fine print as well as the memory card info, the game info, etc. All of that stuff is translated directly into French right below its English counterpart. That's really interesting to see, and I suppose it is the easiest way to be able to add on French for those Quebec regulations without having to up your production costs too much. And I say that because the rest of the package is almost identical. The game itself includes everything that you've seen in our previous unboxing, where you get an English manual, the same English-only disc. There's no French on that disc. It's an English-only disc. And you get the same 3D glasses. There is one thing, however, that the French-Canadian versions do get, and that's a French manual. So in addition to the English manual, which is included in the box, the French manual is packaged externally, similar to how the jacket is. And this manual is not a PAL version of the English manual. For those of you who live in the PAL regions, particularly France, this is not the Sly 3 PAL manual. This is actually just a direct French translation of the English North American Sly 3 manual. So really, I mean, there's not much really to say here. You can line it up page by page, and they'll all match up. These don't include the 3D glasses, but the English version in the box does include the 3D glasses. And this is honestly really interesting to me. I was not expecting anything like this, especially for one specific region in Canada. It's kind of cool that they made this, though I'd imagine it was a bit of a headache having to comply with Quebec's regulations, especially since they are pretty strict about their video game packaging. I do want to talk a little bit about how I think these might have been packaged and produced, because I was fortunate enough to get my Red Label French Canadian version brand new, so I was able to get some insight in how these were packaged. Keep in mind that both the sleeve and the manual were packaged external to the actual game, and what they essentially did was they took a brand new shrink wrapped North American English only game. It was all shrink wrapped and everything. They took the French English sleeve as well as the French manual and just packaged it over that game, and then put another layer of shrink wrap on it and marketed it as a game set for sale. And this is probably the easiest way to market it, especially to Quebec, and it's noticeable because, first of all, that Greatest Hits banner is eclipsing that Sly 3 logo, something that you don't see on the final cover. So it makes me think that they just took the existing Sly 3 art from the original release and just slapped a red banner onto it without taking into consideration moving the logo, which actually did happen on the English only version. Similarly, on the back of the jacket, you might have recalled this from our Sly 3 unboxing, the Greatest Hits version, the English only version, omits the slymask.com URL. However, that URL is present on this so-called Greatest Hits jacket, which further leads me to believe and supports my theory that they just took a Black Label sleeve, translated it directly to French, and then slapped on whatever Greatest Hits things needed to be slapped on, aside from the bottom of that spine. Overall, it's a fairly cost-effective measure, especially if you're marketing it only to a certain region and probably nowhere else in the world. So I can understand why they did this, and it is pretty cool to receive a French-only manual, which I have never seen in my so many years of looking at Sly Cooper and researching it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did. It definitely opened my eyes to sort of how regionalization and localization works with video games. There are certainly a lot of laws, even in Canada and North America, that I didn't really notice that dictate how a game has to be packaged, and it can lead to some interesting finds. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that and were able to get an insight on how games are localized. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button. If you're new here and want to see more content like this, definitely do subscribe and let us know what you guys want us to see next, and also let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this sort of interesting localization of Sly 3 in Canada. It was certainly interesting to me, and I was very lucky to find this new, so I would be able to get a better idea of how it was actually packaged. This has been Shrev of the Sly Cooper Wiki, your #1 resource for anything and everything Sly Cooper. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.